Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sustainability Chats with Friends. I'm so excited to be joined today by Tobias, who has a background in engineering and sales. And so you kind of moved from the mining side of things into the renewable space. And so, yeah, I'm super excited to hear more about your perspectives on everything and also updates because last time we spoke was a few months ago. So if you would please explain to the people who are listening what you do, what your background's in, and just give a brief introduction to yourself.
Right. Yeah, Isabel, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really pleased, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion and the arguments we may have. Yeah, you never know. Yeah, to my background, actually, as you mentioned, I'm Tobias. I'm actually German, so please excuse my accent. I'm for sure having one. And I'm actually Southern German, but not Bavarian. There are also other parts in Southern Germany. And yeah, I'm originally coming from the power generation business. Started in the old world where power generation was basically all based on fossil fuels. So in the past 20, 25 years, I basically was at the forefront of decarbonization and also moving into sustainability, or call it more environmental awareness. And in the last 8 years, actually, I was heading the sales and business development department at RWE Technology International. And that's a 100% subsidiary of the RWE group. And that is Germany's largest power generator, also more than 120 years old by now. So you can imagine that the main source of power generation was coal. Yeah, coming from the industrialization times in the 19th century. But RWE did a tremendously good job in decarbonizing and turning down their coal-fired power generation and moving heavily into the renewable space. They are not yet there to completely abandon the coal-fired power generation, which also has reasons, and not just that they don't want to. It always, to people not in the power generation, it seems like, okay, you just push the red button and emergency stop, and that's it. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that easy, and especially in the electricity business, basically in all countries around the world, it's a very political thing as well. Yeah, so governments always have a bit to talk in this area as well, no matter where in the world. And I was living and working in many parts of the world. I spent 2.5 years in Southeast Asia, doing business development there for another company that was not RWE. And I also spent 2.5 years in Brazil, actually, also not for RWE. So yeah, it's basically similar in every country. However, now RWE, also originally coming from the mining business, and that is now, you mentioned mining already, RWE still operates the largest open pit mines in the European Union. They are in the western part of Germany, very close to the Dutch and Belgian borders. They are drastically reducing the operation of them. But also RWE, with this mining business in the last 5-6 years, got tremendously under pressure by the public. Yeah, actually, they are doing, in my opinion, a very, very good job. And now you can say, sure, he's biased. Yeah, he's working, or he was working. I'm actually at the moment phasing out from RWE, and therefore, for sure, he says, yeah, that is great job that they do. However, if I'm in my position as head of sales of RWETI, which is basically providing engineering and advisory services for the electricity generation and also for the mining industry around the world, I visited many mines all around the world. I brought many mining companies and people from blue collar to executive C-level to the RWE mines as visitor, and they were all astonished how in what a great way basically such a huge mine, or huge mines in total, can be operated. And just to give you an idea, The largest mine of the three they still operate is the Hambach mine. It covers an area of around 35 square kilometers and is around 420 meters deep. Yeah. So it's a very huge hole.
Yeah, it sounds it.
You can imagine, yeah. And naturally, that is how it is. Yeah, mining is a destructive business. That is when you build a house somewhere and you dig a hole for the basement or whatever, it's also destroying this little bit of nature. However, what RWE really does, and this since more than 80 years, almost 100 years, is a proper mine closing and a proper rehabilitation of the mines. And that is actually where the real, and I truly mean really nature protection, or actually nature reintroduction, rehabilitation comes in. And that is where most mining, or basically every mining company that I brought into these mines from RWE, they are really fascinated. Said, hey, this is really what you do, and that is what you do in such a great and efficient way, and really managing to reintroduce the plants and the animals and everything. So therefore, actually, I'm proud, yeah, that I've been involved in that with RWE, despite the fact that at least in Germany, many people still say, well, RWE is really destroying everything there. Yeah.
Yeah, is it the remediation plan mainly that sets them apart from the other mines, or is there something else within the way that they operate?
Not the remediation plan. It's basically the fact that they really implement the remediation plan, yeah, and they go the extra mile. Because if they would go just to the legal level, what they would have to do, roughly speaking, yeah, it's just like, okay, put a bit of topsoil on it, throw a couple of grass seeds, and that's it. Yeah. But they really do well, basically 2 extra miles to have to re-establish really a biodiverse environment there. And the most interesting thing, and that is also what I was talking to the other mining companies, no matter where it's in Brazil, in Colombia, in Canada, in Australia, or name it, yeah. And I'm not talking about coal mines. I'm basically talking about everything, yeah, iron ore, copper, nickel, gold, whatever. And where all the other mines were fascinated is that it's really in the DNA, and therefore in the entire mining process of like most other mines and mining companies in the world that I have seen do it, is to get the permitting for a mine, we need somehow a mine closing and rehabilitation plan. Yeah, here it is, my dear authorities, give me the stamp. Then they get the stamp, and basically then they do the mining. And once the mine comes to a closure after decades, then they remember, there is a mine closing plan, let's have a look at it, and now how can we do it? And within RWE, this is a completely different thing, because what RWE does is really, as soon as ever possible in one part of the mine, once it's clear there will be no resource extraction anymore, then the rehabilitation directly starts. And therefore, even in a mine that is on one side at the mine face, so where the mine moves, still under operation, a kilometer or 2 kilometers on the other side, the rehabilitation is already ongoing, and trees are growing and animals are back and whatever. And luckily, during my time in RWE and the discussions with the mining industry globally, this mindset now slowly changes, so that the mining operations or mine operators and large companies all around the world, they also start to realize to realize that it's also not just a matter of being nice and green and I don't want to say greenwashing, but you can say, I think in the past they did a lot of greenwashing, probably also because they didn't really understand another way. But what I definitely realized, and I'm no mining lobbyist, I'm moving away from this area now, is that they now are leaving the path of greenwashing and really go into the sustainability thing and that they mean it, which also, and that is what we as advisors also explain to them, it's also a matter of cost. You can save a lot of money if you do the mine closing and rehabilitation basically from the very moment that you start the extraction and you integrate it in your processes. And one example, and in the end, no matter, you know how it is, we just discussed before the recording, sustainability is all nice and everybody's talking about, but in the end, if it comes to the cost, the real action is sometimes a little bit reduced.
Put to one side,
and now when I talk to these mining companies around the world and said, okay, you see, now for RWE is operating in this same area in Germany since 120 years. And in such a long period, you need to have a relationship with the communities around and the authorities. And if you do not have this, you are always at risk that your operation permit will be denied, and your business is gone. And then you are in big trouble. So it's in your own interest to tidy up and do good afterwards again. And naturally, in like 80, 100 years ago, this was not as sophisticated as it is today. The good thing is, over this long period of time, RWE also learned a lot. Everybody does, and also optimized both on how to really do a good job in rehabilitation and mine closing, and on the other hand, also to do a good job and do it in a very cost-efficient way.
Right.
And then and something that is what the mining industry nowadays, in my personal perspective, nowadays realizes it, because in most countries, people and also governments become more aware of this, like, you told us for so many times and so many years actually that you do good again, and in the end, after decades, everything is destroyed, and then you go and say, well, goodbye. And we are there with the dirt and the destructive landscapes and so on and so forth. Now, you need to prove many times that what you do or what you plan to do is really that you do, which for some mines in some areas already, and I'm talking from big companies, not this illegal small scale mining, it costs them years for repeatedly updating environmental plans and whatever before they get a permit. And when I told the mining managers then, now imagine, what does 1 year delay cost for you? Because the people in the country don't trust you anymore. Now imagine what this 1 year costs. A great portion of your continuous rehabilitation would already be paid.
Right.
And then they start realizing, and it's great. That really gives hope to me, and wonderful.
And is it just in Germany that they have to prove their rehabilitation plan? Because I don't know if you know this, but when I was first working on Future Yard, the team and I were debating, okay, do we design a service that helps regenerate abandoned mining sites, or do we help people regenerate their gardens, which, as you know, is what we ended up going with. But there are so many mining sites which are just abandoned in the US, and I'm sure all over the world.
All over the world.
And so
all over the world.
I'm curious, because it sounds like Germany has laws in place that require the mines to show that this proof that you were talking about, but is that a global case, or is it really just in Germany?
in general, on paper, it's a global case. Yeah?
Okay.
The question always is that, or the issue is that in many, many countries around the world in the past, yeah, what was written on paper was different from what was actually done.
Okay.
But this is something that now changes. And this is also something that the mining industry realizes. But yeah, this is something that they now need to get used to. And but they're doing a great job in that. Again, I think people that are coming not from the mining business, they think, well, why don't you do it immediately? It should be so easy. It's so obvious. Huh?
Yeah, that was actually one of my questions. So you said there's no like magic red button that you can just press and the mining operators.
Exactly.
Like what is that process then for the people who are just like, well, just stop. Obviously, just stop coal mining and switch to whatever renewable it is.
Yeah, this
In
is
practice,
when you come to coal mining or actually the coal power generation, the thing in how can I say this now in English? I'd call it in countries with established systems. I don't want to call it fully developed countries because this sounds actually weird. But if you look, for example, into Europe, yeah, the power generation and the power transmission and distribution system was built over the last 120 years. Yeah. And it was technically built in such a way that you have a few places all over the country where you have a massive power generation.
Okay.
Large coal-fired power stations, large nuclear stations, large gas, large whatever, all in one spot. And from there, you basically transmit and distribute to the consumers. All your transportation, your transmission system, and your distribution system were basically built into one direction and in such a way that the power stations were comparably easy to control. Yeah. You ramped up the production in a power station when there was a demand. For example, it's really funny. In the morning, everybody gets up, everybody turns on the coffee machine, everybody turns on the television, everybody turns on the whatever hair dryer, and then you can really, and this is done over the entire country or continent. And then you can see like the consumption curve is going up. So you know basically over the time, in the morning, starting 5 o'clock, you need to really ramp up your power stations.
Right.
Now with renewable energies, that's completely different. Even if you have, if it looks massive, yeah, if you have a photovoltaic plant or a wind park somewhere, yeah, the size is comparably small, compared to, for example, a 2 or 3,000 megawatt coal-fired power stations,
Right.
which is at one spot. So the renewables are more small scale and distributed over a huge area, basically the entire country.
Right.
That's the one thing. The other thing, even worse, is you can't control them. There is sun when there is sun, and not when you switch off the or turn away the clouds. Yeah, and there is wind, and when there is wind, and not necessarily at this very moment where you need the electricity. So that is why you basically need large-scale storage. And only if you would have this large-scale storage, you can store excess electricity, which is produced probably at a moment where there are no consumers or not enough consumers. And you can also basically equalize your transmission and distribution grids. And over this transition period, you basically still somehow need this controllable, mostly fossil fuel. You can discuss probably, oh, this is known since the 1980s, so why do we only in the last 5, 6, 8 years seriously start to ramp up the renewables and to change all this transmission and distribution grids? But that's a different question.
Right.
That is certainly a question which is feasible, And that is something what we also need to ask ourselves as societies. This is not just in the power generation business, so like this. It's also like you're coming more from the fashion industry. So the fashion industry knows since decades that it's probably not the cleanest industry.
Yeah.
And the most sustainable one. So now is the question, why didn't it change already in the 1980s or 90s?
Yeah.
It
It is crazy. It is crazy.
Yeah.
It's
It is crazy.
It's making me think there's this documentary or film that I've been wanting to watch, which is, I'm forgetting the title of it, but it's basically talking about why electric vehicles didn't become popular in the early 2000s when they could have been. And it was because one of the US presidents at the time said, no, let's keep going with coal,
Sure.
fossil fuels. And that's why it got delayed by however long it's been, what, 20 years, 30 years? Which I think is another interesting one. But yeah, I think it's a very political issue.
It's definitely a political issue. Yeah, basically all these questions are very political on the one hand. On the other hand, and that is also something which RWE basically had to realize that the very hard way, if the society and the voters actually of the politicians behave in a specific way, there are possibilities and really ways to change. And I can come back in a second to the example with RWE. The issue there again is, but now we are going deep, and it's a very tough discussion. I think it's also a psychological moment. If there are, I don't know how many people around on the earth now, 8-9 billion by now.
Yeah.
So for me, what do I matter?
Right. I hate that mindset though. I hate it.
Yeah, you are right. But in the end, this is you. For example, you're in the supermarket, or you go to fashion. So why do so many people go to Primark? Or any other super cheap, super fast fashion thing? Also, I tell you, 80% at least should know that this is actually a very bad decision to go there.
Right.
Even if I've never been to a Primark, and I'm not in the fashion industry, but I can imagine there is a lot of teenagers and younger people going.
Yeah.
Now, if I look, my son, I got a son, he will be 19 years in a few weeks. And if I consider what they learn in school, they even learn in school all about this stuff. All the sustainability and so on and so forth, at least in Germany, and I think they also do in most countries around the world nowadays. And still, they in the morning they learn in school all the world is crazy and the biodiversity issue and climate change and resources, blah blah blah. And in the afternoon, they walk into Primark.
Well, they plug into their PlayStation for 5 hours.
Or plug in the PlayStation for 5 hours or even more. If I look into the consumption of the computer of my son now. And that's an interesting question. But coming back to this issue with the people really can change something is, for example, in 2018, maybe some people still, at least in Germany, they will remember, for this one large Hambach mine of RWE, it was actually planned that the mine will be moving further, so it will be extended. And basically the plan for this and the basic permit for this was decided and given in the 1970s. So for 50 years, or 50 years ago.
A long time ago.
Yeah, that's what you need in mining. Mining is a really long-term business, and it involves very high capital investment at the very beginning. You don't do this for a year or two. And you want, as a business, you need to have the stability and be sure that you can operate in this area there for decades, basically. However, so the general permit was there. But naturally, before each of the extension phases, other permits would have been required.
Okay, good. Yeah,
And
that's more what I was expressive about, because I was like, that's crazy that you could get a permit that's still valid for 30 years time, but okay, there's
no. But there is a base, at least in Germany, and I think that is in many countries around the world. It's like, okay, this is your mining claim,
Yeah.
where the mine for the next whatever 20 to 100 years. There are mines in the world that are in operation since 100 years, moving on and on and on. Is basically that is the area where the mining will be allowed, but still before you move on and before you start cutting trees or whatever, resettling people, animals, and whatever is in the way, basically, you need to have other permits. And only if you get these ones, where also your actions in the past will be reviewed. Are you trustful? Did you do what was on the paper, what was planned, blah blah blah? Then you are basically allowed to move on. Very high level explanation. And for RWE, that was basically now coming to another one of these, or a new expansion phase started, and it was basically again like, okay, as we did for 100 years, in this mining area, we put a permitting application to the authorities. They will give the stamp, and we move on. Yeah. Well, now what did happen in 2018? Now remember, this was when Fridays for Future was really, really big and famous all around the world, and the entire society in many, many countries was really about climate change. And there was people on the streets every Friday and in between as well. Then these climate protectors, Climate for Fridays for Future, they did really, really, really big demonstrations in front of the mine.
Okay.
And sometimes it was even dangerous because, well, 99% of the people were just peacefully demonstrating, but there was always a few black sheep, that were really, how do you say this in English? They
Like
were really,
aggressive.
sorry?
Violent or aggressive?
Yeah, they were really aggressive and violent against and accusing people personally. Even me, I was accused on LinkedIn. So Tobias, how can you work for such a destructive company and so on and so forth? Destroying the environment with mining, and because there was still a bit of forest in the way, basically of the mine. How can you do this? And shame on you, And suddenly, the authorities realized basically the whole of Germany, I say it openly now in my thoughts, the voters are against it. So now, we don't give the permit, to move on. Okay. It felt like the entire population said, no, this is really bad. They should not be allowed to move on. And suddenly the authorities said, no, you're not allowed to move on. So what I want to say is, if the public pressure is really high enough, each and everybody of us can really be part of a change. In every industry, I'm quite sure.
That is a powerful example of how one person can
definitely
make movement happen. That is
definitely.
I guess I'm curious, because I know also you've now transitioned away from mining, but before we get onto that, just to wrap up the mining bit, I'm curious obviously nuclear is a big topic of conversation. So I guess I have like a two-part question. Do you have like an idealistic view of how you think we can transition to more renewable power? And do you have what you think the reality will actually be?
You're really asking tough questions,
You don't have to answer them if you don't want to. It's just that's where mine.
I want to answer them. Now you're talking about nuclear or renewable? You're talking about renewable energy now, right?
I was speaking about renewable, but a lot of people are saying that you need the nuclear to kind of supplement the renewable, I guess.
No matter whether we're talking about coal, gas, nuclear, in the end, and this is a really inconvenient truth, is that, in my opinion, we need to find a way to just reduce our consumption. in electricity as well as in everything else, which is even in nature-based solutions. Now probably we move also into my new direction that I'm looking at. Even if you think, and that was a discussion already in the 1980s, so I'm probably a little bit older than you, so I still remember the 1980s. Even there were discussions very similar to what we now have. And the time when the Club of Rome actually first published their book, was in the 1980s, closer to where it is now, or to where we are now. And it was still in the mind of many people before it got obviously completely in the 1990s, and now slowly comes back. But my personal view, and that I definitely need to say this does not represent RWE. My personal view is like, regarding nuclear power, I think now if you look into Germany, I think nuclear power is not the holy grail.
Okay.
I think now if you look into Germany, and it was a government decision, they made a mistake in the sequence. I think from a carbon emission perspective, they definitely should have first phased out coal-fired power generation and then phased out nuclear power generation. Now in Germany, for various reasons, they did it the other way around. But we also have to be very honest, and that is, in my opinion, something that is very often forgotten in this discussion about nuclear power is great. It's really the cost. The one thing is also uranium is mined somewhere. Luckily not in Europe, so we don't see the destruction there. No, it's in wherever. It's in Canada, it's in Mali, it's in countries that are so huge that hardly anybody passes by these big holes. So there is also a destructive side of it. So there are only a few uranium mines around the world, and naturally the energy density of the material is really high. That's the one thing. The other thing is, okay, there is this risk that something like in Chernobyl or in Fukushima happens, but without being a physician and without being really technically aware of all these bits and details, I think, again, my very personal opinion, I think the risk of a nuclear power explosion is much smaller than the risk that all these coal-fired power stations around the world have to harm basically the society and the environment and everything. And also, it's probably a little bit an unethical discussion. Really just talking numbers, not humanity. If something happens and a nuclear power station explodes, a large area is basically destroyed. Many people are harmed, and it's basically lost for decades, or probably also for 2-3 centuries that people can live there. But now consider climate change. There is not one single square millimeter on Earth that is not negatively impacted by climate change, which is then coming from all this carbon from coal-fired power stations and many other sources of greenhouse gases. So from a very global perspective, I would say, probably we should keep nuclear moving on for longer. Whether we need to build new nuclear power stations, I'm not so sure, because yes, there is one question: the long-term storage is basically not really answered, in my opinion. Nevertheless, if you go to renewables, in my opinion, there is no way around renewables. On the other hand, if you look into, and everybody nowadays is looking into China, because they are moving very fast in really massive scale renewable buildings or constructions. However, I'm living south of Stuttgart, right next to the mountain range of the Swabian Alps. So it's kind of if I look out of the window, there is a kind of a big step of 400 meters.
Nice.
Now, if I think like, okay, if we do it like China, we cut out all the trees and use this great slope to plaster with photovoltaic panels. I tell you, this is not what I want. And I also doubt whether this is really sustainable.
Right, right.
Yeah. And again, the question is, why not plaster all the houses? Also, I don't have photovoltaic on my house. Again, it's a question of cost, and not just for the individual, but also coming back to this energy transmission and distribution system, this has to be modified. But this is, again, now coming to opportunities for countries which are not so, again, I don't want to say developed, which don't have these established systems. It's a wonderful chance. I sometimes compare it with what happened in Africa. You and I in the European countries, we know all these old handphones with the wire and how to dial, and you're really immobile. Yeah, you are fixed.
Yeah.
And this was completely missed out in Africa because they directly went to mobile solutions.
Yeah.
And that was very easy for them because, or comparably easy, but because they didn't have the question, why should I change? Why should I spend extra money? Because I do already have a phone. So why do I need suddenly that one on top? That there is no on top for them. And that is something where I think there is a real great chance for countries like all over Africa, or well, there is many continents that have countries which don't have all these old style, old world developed systems, which nowadays are not suitable anymore for the future.
Yeah. So do you think it will be possible one day to be 100% powered by renewable energy? In Germany, say, just as an example.
In Germany,
Or do you think there'll always be that kind of, we'll always kind of stay in that transitionary space where it's okay, there's still a little bit of coal going on. There might be, well, you said nuclear's been phased out, so not nuclear, but
if we manage to find a storage solution which is commercially viable, then it is possible. I'm quite sure.
okay.
And again, that is something which puts hope, or where I'm hopeful, because if you look into what solar panels or all this renewable stuff cost 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, it's gone down massively.
And now it's so cheap, basically. Then technology or technological development in batteries or in green hydrogen production and all that, basically kind of material and technologies that somehow contribute to storing electricity or electricity. I'm quite positive that this will happen.
I'm glad. I think it's also like, speaking to the power surge demand thing quickly. My uncle and aunt and my granny have solar panels on their houses, and they all have electric cars. And so they're obsessed with it. They get the app out on their phone. They can see when it's the cheapest time of the day to charge up. Like, they're completely hooked. And so I think that's quite a helpful way to use gamification to manipulate the human mind to use these more renewable resources.
Definitely, yeah. And I think this will move on. Yeah. Also for me, I'm sure sooner or later I will change to electric. Well, not to electric power, but to photovoltaics on my home here as well. Again, for the moment, it's this. Do I need it? Because I have everything is working. I have a gas heater here and so on and so forth. Yeah, I don't have an e-vehicle yet. Yeah, because still driving the old car. Yeah, when it breaks down, then I probably change. But again, this is something like, personally, yeah, I know it would probably be better to change it.
Right.
But again, is it like, ooh, do I really have this additional money? Do I want to spend it? Or do I spend it rather at the moment to the business I want to move into?
Right.
Which is nature-based construction materials.
Yeah. How did you get into that space from our
That was also actually, how did I get into this? By a key moment, or basically a shock in life. So what happened? Yeah, my my regular job in the mining business 3 years brought me to the Brazilian Amazon. And despite the fact that you can watch all these deforestation documentaries 24/7 by now, and everybody knows about it. I was really shocked when I really experienced it, especially in this area where I was in the state of Pará, so in the Amazon region in the northern Brazil. You land in a kind of protected small airport. You land in a protected area on a higher plateau because it's a mountainous area in this region. This airport is in a really jungle-like region. Yeah, and then it takes you 15-20 minutes by down the hill outside of the protected area. And it's so great. Yeah, there are huge butterflies flying over the road. It's really noisy, because there are screens, there are birds, there are monkeys crying. You don't see anything apart from the butterflies because it's in the jungle. That's the downside of the jungle. There are animals, but they are always hidden, and therefore for tourists it's probably not so attractive. It's different to the African savanna where you can see miles, and then you see all the big animals. Basically they are there in the forest, in the jungle, but you don't see them, but you can hear them.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And by the very moment I crossed this border, this very thin borderline of the protected to the unprotected area, there was no more, and there was dead silence. And that is, I still get goosebumps when I remember this really razor sharp line from bustling life and dead silence. Because in this area then there is a lot of cattle farming in Brazil. So it's not where the big soy fields are, because it's a little bit a hilly area. So there is a lot of cattle farming. A lot of this cattle is also for export. So I don't blame the Brazilians. That's what I did. What was it? 30 years ago, I did from university, I spent half a year in Indonesia, and I blamed all these Indonesians where they burn and cut down their forests for palm oil, until I realized that most of the palm oil is going to Europe, actually, for our own consumption. And it's similar in Brazil. They cut down for cattle and for soy plantation, and most of that is for export, and a lot is going to Europe. And then I thought, damn, we really have a problem. We really have a problem. I was truly shocked, although I knew everything from all these documentaries. And then at the same occasion, these 5 days that I spent there, I was meeting with a biologist, German, but he's living for 30 years in Brazil already, and actually working for the mining industry, because he is doing research to really find out animals to live in the area and how can a proper mine closing and mine rehabilitation and reintroduction of all these plants and animals and so on doing. So he's doing a great job in research. It's very interesting to talk to them. However, then I talked to him and said, hey, Markus, what they are doing is really crazy. You can see the soil is eroding, no animals anymore, everything. And he said, Tobias, now I do see it the same way. And now you can be a lot of Germans or people from the Western world, when they come and say, oh, you need to change this. We need to establish another NGO to plant some trees and to do reforestation for original primary forests and so on and so forth. And he said, when 30 years ago, when he was a student, a biology student coming into Brazil for doing research there, he had the same idea. Build a fence around it and don't touch the forest anymore. But it doesn't work, unfortunately. The world tries since 50 years to do it like this. And he said there are so many NGOs planting 1 hectare here, whereas 50 kilometers further, 1,000 hectares burst into flames. It's always nice, and naturally it's great promotion, and it also has its good reason to do this, but it doesn't solve the basic issue.
Right.
And the basic issue is, on the one hand, well, the basic issue is the people that live there want to make a living. And it's a bit naive to think that all the people that still live there are indigenous, which have definitely no contact to Western world, and lifestyle. There are still, unfortunately, these get still a lot under pressure, which we all know, but there are so many people, and also indigenous, that naturally also want to have a hand phone and all this. And at the very moment where you start to want something which is not provided naturally by the forest, what do you need? Cash. You need money. And now, how do you get the money? You need to sell something. And if you do not have a proper, whatever a proper job is, call it a proper regular income, because you don't have employment, you start to extract, and probably extract on an unsustainable way, because you need a surplus. You're not extracting to have your own essential needs, which is food, basically, food and living, but you extract an extra. And then the entire negative vicious circle basically starts. You extract, and the natural forest degrades, then also your food degrades, and you start to cut the big trees, and you sell the big trees. Then what to do with the land? You burn it, you put in cattle. That the small scale. The big scale is you are a very massive business corporation, and you basically, sometimes you probably pay off the people and get rid of the land, or you just whatever you do, to have these massive areas. But in the end, the problem is the same. And then this biologist said, and that is something where the only solution is to make really this forest in a way, to find a way how to utilize it without completely destroying it. So naturally, most likely, you need to change here and there the forest. It would not be a primary forest anymore. Also, if you go into an agroforestry system, something like this would be the greatest thing, an agroforestry system, where you still have the diversity, and you still have the soil cover, you still have leaves, because for this transpiration circle in the tropics, and so on and so forth. And you have, because it's mostly forest animals, and for them to move from one place to another, they need forest cover. And what you now have is, like, you have a protected area here, and a couple of 100 kilometers or more further, you have another protected area. And in the middle, it's basically a savanna, or in the worst case, already kind of a desert, because the desertification is starting. So animals do not move between these protected areas. Now, if you're in between, instead of a savanna or a really industrialized agriculture, you have kind of agroforestry things, or anything else where you still have forest cover, kind of, or plant cover, then these animals and this genetic exchange can still happen. And that is what he said after 30 years watching it, realizing it, and thinking about it. He said, in his opinion, that's the only reason, the only possibility to somehow keep this tropical Amazonian system, which is all behind, alive. And then I thought, like, basically he's right. That is true. If you look at how many NGOs all around the world there are to where we save the Amazon, you ask yourself, why do we still have a problem? And then I think, like, he must be true. And then I thought, what can we do? And then I Googled a lot, and then I realized Brazil has a lot of bamboo. I thought, well, I saw all these bamboo in Brazil before. We see it everywhere. But I thought this is introduced invasive species from Asia, because for me, bamboo was always Asia, naturally. And then I realized, oh no, Brazil has the second largest native bamboo forest in the world.
No way.
But nobody knows. Even the most Brazilians don't know, because it's in a very, it's a huge country. And it's in a very remote area. And also different to Asia, the culture to utilize bamboo is not there. In Asia, all over Asia, especially in China, since 4,000 years, they use bamboo and they do really cool stuff with it.
Yeah. Cool.
Whereas in South America, naturally, the indigenous people also utilize bamboo. It's also now going back in history. Now, when the Portuguese or the Spanish came, most what they did is, on the one hand, I now say probably somebody says that's not true, but I would say they didn't like the indigenous. So whatever came from the indigenous was stupid stuff. Yeah, that's the one thing. The other thing is also they used to build houses with what they knew, which is stone and real wood.
Yeah.
And they didn't know how to, for example, how to treat the bamboo, that it doesn't decay quickly, because in the end it's a grass. Yeah, and therefore it decays also. If you don't treat it, it also decays more quicker than a big tree naturally. So the know-how or the culture of utilizing bamboo and the know-how to utilize it was basically almost completely lost in South America. And then I did some more research. And that was the second part of how I came into this. Sorry for, it's a real long story.
No, I'm interested by it. Keep going, please.
Yeah, and the third part, which then made me really think of becoming convinced that there's also there is an economic perspective to do this. What I want to do is, coming from the power generation, decarbonization, mining business, and it's a very short step into the steel production. Nowadays, steel production is very carbon intensive. It's a technology that was used since basically humankind is there, but in large scale since the Industrial Revolution. And basically what the standard steel production nowadays is, from iron ore, you put the iron ore with a hell lot of coal into one big blast furnace, and then you melt the iron out of the iron ore and so on. But naturally, as always, when you burn coal, you have a lot of carbon emissions. So nowadays, luckily, people are starting to rethink about this. There are new processes where you don't need the coal, you can do it with hydrogen, preferably green hydrogen, and so on and so forth, to avoid that. Roughly speaking, 1 ton of steel means 2 tons of CO2. And now imagine how much steel in most buildings is. And now imagine if emission and carbon prices rise. And if the industry, what they want to do, at least they say that, change the processes away from this coal utilization into green hydrogen, so decarbonized solution, this requires a massive amount of money. And the steel industry itself predicts or assumes that the price in the next 10 to 15 years will rise between 10 to 30% average, which means that there will always be steel. It's a great material, actually, but it means that for a lot of purposes, the alternative materials become more competitive. Now, I first thought, well, then plant trees, and then utilize the trees. Because a lot of people also say, and even in Germany, there are programs to increase the use of wood and timber, basically, in the construction, building, and so on, housing, and so on. Now, if you look into the condition of the forest over here in Germany, it's becoming really bad because climate change, the summers get hotter and drier, the trees that lived here for 1,000 years cannot cope with these conditions anymore, or don't cope so good. So they either die or they grow much slower. That means the source of timber will also go down. And there was a study by the University of Kassel together with WWF, World Wide Fund for Nature. And this study from 2023, yeah, so 2-3 years old, pretty recently, they say already nowadays, the utilization of timber is exceeding the sustainable growth and sustainable supply by around 50%, which again, coming to economics, yeah, that will mean, and this is what people also in Brazil realize, wood becomes more expensive. So a more fast-growing alternative will be required and will become more competitive. And that is where I say, okay, now Brazil has lots of areas which are also degraded or actually need protection, yeah, to become, but they can only be seriously long-term protected if they become a value.
Right.
And carbon credits are a nice thing, but obviously not enough. Yeah. And so Brazil has the bamboo, a lot of native species, and therefore my dream is, and that is what I'm working on, is to build up a production for engineered bamboo in Brazil, actually, to utilize in a sustainable way the natural bamboo that they have, and also back the know-how on, hey, bamboo is really a great plant, and you can, if you replant it, wonderful. Huh?
Yeah.
Gosh,
So
how long did I talk now without a break?
I don't know.
Why
I
are you
don't know.
talking again?
I'll tell you afterwards when I go back and edit.
Don't do
No, but I enjoy hearing your thought process and the solution that you've come up with, given all of the problems that you uncovered along the way. And so I guess kind of where my mind's going now is, who are you partnering with to do this? Are you partnering with indigenous communities and local communities who live on the land?
For sure. So I partner with various people. On the one hand, yeah, as we discussed for quite a long time, I'm coming from power generation and mining. So now the question is, hey, this guy has no idea about timber construction, bamboo, and all that stuff.
Right.
How does he want to do this? Yeah, I'm aware that I don't have any know-how here. That is why I say, okay, I need to complement my knowledge. Again, Google was my best friend, and I luckily came about a team of researchers at the KIT Institute of Technology, which is just an hour away from where I live.
Okay.
That did 12 or 15 years of research together with ETH in Zurich and the NUS in Singapore. So these three universities cooperated for many, many years, and it's a lovely couple. And they basically developed a technology on how to process bamboo and produce engineered bamboo also in a sustainable way. Okay. And they also made a spin-off from these universities, which is registered in Singapore. Actually, it's a company Widuz, WIDUZ. You can also Google. And they have a proven technology already. They would love to cooperate with me, actually, so that I can utilize their technology in Brazil for the production there. Okay, so they are the technology partner. Yeah, I also asked them, I said, hey, you can buy this engineered bamboo at IKEA, yeah? All made in Vietnam or China, and these bamboo blades, for sure you know them as well, yeah?
Yeah.
And so what is so special about your technology? Yeah?
Right.
Because competing with Asia is very, very difficult.
I can imagine.
In also in Brazil, yeah? And then it's like, yeah, for sure, yeah, we know that this is something which is done in China or in other Asian countries, this engineered bamboo, since many years. No secret, that's also what they considered in their research. But the way that they do it, they invented basically another way on how to laminate or split the bamboo. And they developed other kind of glues, yeah, less toxic glues, and also a different type of or kind of putting the whole stuff together again. Because what very often in the standard production of engineered bamboo in Asia is done is they put a hell of a lot of resins in, which on the one hand is kind of toxic, yeah? And on the other hand, now from a more construction perspective, the very positive specification of bamboo is it's comparably lightweight, super strong, and yet flexible. And if you put in a hell lot of resin, it's not flexible anymore. It's very heavy. So basically, two of the three really great specifications are gone, and that is with gel technology is still there. And that is what convinced me and said, hey, this is really cool. That also can be competitive with China. So that is the partner on the technology side. Yeah, and I'm very happy to have them. And also please check their website. They also got awarded the Built by Nature award last year. Yeah.
What does that mean? Does it mean that they're just doing things more sustainably, or?
Exactly. Yeah, there is an organization. It's an what is it? An NGO in I think they are based actually in Amsterdam, comparably new, Built by Nature. It's a group that is, or an organization that really wants to promote nature-based construction materials.
Okay.
And every year they give away an award for really outstanding solutions and inventions. And as said, yeah, we do, and their technology, they got awarded this Built by Nature award. So if you check Built by Nature, they also have a nice website. Really cool stuff. Great organization.
Yeah.
So that is the one partner thing, or the partnership, and the other partnership is what you said, or what you ask is, do I partner with indigenous and rural communities? Yes, I do. I just yesterday I got an email from Acre, which is probably the most remote state in Brazil. It's really hard to get there. It's at the far western border. It borders to Bolivia and Peru, but is really, well, on the western, looking at the continent, on the western side you can't reach them because there are the Andes. Well, you can reach them. There are roads nowadays. On the eastern side, there is thousands of kilometers of Amazon forest. So it's really hard. But and these indigenous people and rural communities also get more and more under pressure because there are roads. For the same reason as we discussed before. And I want to really give these indigenous and also other rural communities, which probably are not indigenous, but still face the same issues. There are no jobs. And if they cut down everything, basically there is the vicious circle and the spiral going down. Because rivers dry up, no water. It's really a hell lot of things following up with the deforestation. It's not just the biodiversity loss. And that is also, I want to give these people employment opportunities. I want to give an economic argument also against their authorities, governments, agro lobbyists, and whatever, where they say, you see, our land, where we naturally have this bamboo growing, it has an economic value. It's not just like only soy plantations or only cattle farming has an economic value. I mean, long term, the big trees also have an economic value, but just one time, and then you cut them, and that's it. And it's not an economic value just on paper, on credits.
Totally.
But it's something where we have jobs. We have something to do. We can contribute to the local economy or the national economy, and so on and so forth. And that is something that I want to do. And now the question probably that, or sometimes I'm asked, is like, but isn't it the same like cutting down? And I said, no, because bamboo, and that is a good thing. Bamboo is a grass. Biologically seen, it's a grass. And like you mow the grass in the yard, basically you cut it and a couple of weeks later it's there again. Bamboo is very similar. Well, to get these really big poles and strong poles that you need, it takes a little bit more than a few weeks. However, you don't basically cut the whole clump down. Yeah. Because in a clump there are always young poles, old poles, soft ones, tall ones, small ones, whatever. Yeah. What you need to provide the really high quality engineered bamboo is the big, hard, strong poles. That means that you take out only selectively these poles. Yeah. So you never have huge areas which you cut down completely and need to wait another couple of years before they grow. And also, what I do not want to have is monoculture.
Yeah, that was
There are already bamboo monoculture type forests or areas in Brazil, but I do not want to push this artificially. So therefore, that shall also be part of the training and say, okay, this bamboo is just one part of your income stream. Yeah, preferably you have an agroforestry system or whatever. Yeah, but you definitely have a reason not to cut down everything. Just for the bamboo.
Yeah, that's interesting that it can continue to grow despite being chopped. Like that's a benefit. But I also think that there's an interesting feedback loop too, because you have communities on the ground who presumably will be able to see, okay, there's too much of an imbalance now, there's too much bamboo, we need to stop planting, we need to plant this instead. And
sure,
it's a cool.
Sure.
Yeah.
This is definitely something, but it's also something where I definitely, I would say, I do rely on this local and indigenous know-how. And which I'm happy, because I want to integrate them and I want to involve the local people. I don't want to benefit just once and then say, well, now you please go off. Now I know everything that I need to know. That definitely will never happen, because all these tropical systems are quite complex. I'm fully aware of this, but I also want to. How do I say that in English now? I want to value their know-how.
Well, yeah, it's a solution that uses capitalism and all of that as a benefit instead of using it purely for extraction. And so
The idea
where it differs to what usually happens, which, like he says, is they go in, or I say they, colonialists, whatever it may be, people from the West go in, steal the know-how, go off, make their own thing. This sounds like it's much more holistic in that it's all being built out together and in a almost a fairer way. Like, look, we live in this world where money is coming predominantly from the West and from these extractive processes. Here's how we can reward regeneration and living more harmoniously with the land, I guess. Like it's an interesting case study. Like I'd be
that's it. At least that's the idea.
Yeah.
I
That's why I
know
said I'd be interested to see how it rolls out. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Naturally, I'm also very interested to see. I'm just at the start. Now is always to start something. I'm now looking for investors basically because that is no digital or software or artificial intelligence thing. This is really hard tech. It needs a production facility, and therefore probably you need a little bit more money, to build a production. So it's still low tech. Although the product is high tech, it's quite interesting, but still, it's hardware. It needs capex, and that is now, what I'm working on, and which, frankly speaking, is more difficult than I expected. But it's probably also maybe for something like this not the optimal or the optimum time, because we all know about all these political discussions all around the world where sustainability is definitely not on priority one anymore. And that also has an influence on investors in all these capital markets for sure. However, now in November, in 2 months from 6 weeks actually from now, there is the COP30 in Belém in the Amazon in Brazil. I do hope that this gives not just a greater awareness for this 1 or 2 weeks, but also behind. And therefore, it also shows investors, hey, that is something where we really need to do something, and where it's definitely worth to take the risk, to invest in something which definitely has a market. I did my homework, I did the research, but naturally, every hard tech investment bears a specific risk, because you buy a machinery and then you have it.
Right.
And you need to operate it, and you basically need to operate it constantly. But yeah, I'm in the business for many years already. That's how it is.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's next then?
Well, next is just finish to build up the website. The next step is to look for further partners on potential bamboo suppliers, interested off-takers of the end product. I'm talking to some interior architects and designers in Brazil, actually, that also say, hey, that would be really cool. That is basically what we definitely need in Brazil, so we don't have to import from Asia.
Right.
Crazy.
Right. Yeah, but yeah, that is.
But still, naturally there's something or more interested off-takers, because that will then convince also potential investors. And in the end, what I need is some investors, so that we can do the final site selection where the factory will be. That is the major challenge now ahead, to make there the right decision, and that needs a little bit more research and time, but I'm working on that. And then the thing can start.
Right. Exciting.
It
That
is.
is exciting. Well, you have to keep us all updated with how it all goes.
I will, for sure. I will. Maybe
Right.
in a year from now, we can have another podcast here and I can update
Yeah,
you.
I would love that. We'd have to do an update. That would be great. We should do that. I'll add it to my calendar. So to wrap up, usually I just say thank you and bye. But in the last podcast episode that I recorded, the guest speaker, Christine, left us all with a question, kind of like a self-reflective question, which I really liked. And then I was just in London for Fashion Week and Design Week, and I was at this Regenerating Fashion Future event, and Fashion Declares and Safia Mini were hosting, and she kept asking all of the panelists, what's one action that you want the audience to take away with them? And so I really liked these thoughts. And so I'm introducing a new thing, which is inspired by both, which is basically what's one curiosity? And a curiosity could be a book, it could be a philosophy, it could be a country, it could be a system, it could be anything basically. But what is one curiosity that you think our listeners should go and look more into or do?
Definitely. I would say, okay, whenever they have a construction project or renovation project or something, they should also at least consider and seriously think of any nature-based solutions, because nowadays construction industry and all these materials is a massive contributor to carbon emission and all eternity chemicals and everything. And there are nowadays really great and cool innovations, be it nature-based paints or insulation material or whatever. And that is something where I say, hey, just think about it. When you have such a project, and Google a little bit. Well, a lot of these are small companies and probably not obvious when you go through the DIY store, but you should Google it. Take half a day, Google it, and you will be surprised. There is really cool stuff.
Yeah, there really is. There really, really is.
That is what I would love your community to think about.
Amazing.
And keep in mind.
Okay. Great. Oh, well, thank you so much. And thank you for taking the time to join and share and everything. I'm wishing you all the best of luck with the project. It's super exciting.
You too, Isabel. Thank you very much. All the best for you. Fashion industry also needs big push forward. And support there in becoming more sustainable. And I really hope I didn't bore too much in talking almost 2 hours.
No. It's only an hour and a half.
It's an hour and a half, and it's okay.
It's all good. Amazing. Thank you.